Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 28th of February and we are going to discuss two very important topics which are in news. The astronaut designate for the Gaganyaan mission. Four astronauts have been identified, all of them belonging to the Indian Air Force. They have been given the astronaut badge by the Indian Prime Minister in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. Will all of these four fly on the Gaganyaan mission, which is going to be the first manned mission of ISRO or India to the low Earth orbit? No, not all of them, but three out of them, or maybe all of them. It is not clear as of now. When talking about the Gaganyaan mission, it will demonstrate India's indigenous capabilities for manned missions to space. Wasn't it before that Indians were there in space? Yes, but they were not sent by the Indian spacecrafts. Next is Science for Sustainable Development. This is the theme for this year's National Science Day, which happens to be today, that is 28th of February. It is a noble, I would say, idea that science is being directed towards sustainable development, which also happens to be our commitment after the Paris Pact of 2015. We want to be a developed country, but sustainable development is the key. But the big question is that is funding adequate for us to direct science towards sustainable development with us? I'm sorry to say, no. India is one of those countries which spends very less on research and development, 0.64% of its GDP. The global average is 1.8%. We target to spend 2%, but we will only become developed if we spend 3% of our GDP every year till 2047 on research and development. So, let us see what the first news has for us. So, astronaut designates for the Gaganyaan mission. So, in this particular topic, we will see what Gaganyaan mission is. But yes, before that, the four astronauts, Group Captain Prasanth Balakrishnan Nair, Group Captain Ajit Krishnan, Group Captain Angad Pratap, and Wing Commander Shubhanshu Shukla. They've got this astronaut badge with them, which the Prime Minister is giving. So this person is the next. Prime Minister will move to him the next. That is why you don't see a badge over here. So this is basically what it is. And the final crew for the mission will be picked from among the four. It can be a possibility that all four will go. But yes, maybe three, and one humanoid named Vyom Mitra will be traveling. This Gaganyaan mission will be launched somewhere in 2025, but before the launching of the Gaganyaan mission in 2025, by the end of 2024, that is this year, ISRO will be sending a spacecraft in the low Earth orbit following the same trajectory which the Gaganyaan will follow. But that will be unmanned, just to do a kind of rehearsal, to kind of testing of those missions, because that spacecraft has to go and come back. Coming back is very crucial. So then only manned missions are successful. Now these people have been shortlisted through a rigorous selection process and they have been undergoing training. Very rigorous training they have been undergoing, because they have to stay there in the low Earth orbit in the Gaganyaan for 3 days. So let us see about the Gaganyaan mission. It consists of a crewed orbital spacecraft that is expected to take astronauts to space for a period of 3 years. Space means low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is up to 1000 or 1200 kilometers. Up to. So this Gaganyaan will be going 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface, which definitely lies in this range of low Earth orbit. So the objectives is to demonstrate indigenous capability. We earlier actually sent astronauts in space, like Rakesh Sharma and all were there. But those people did not go on Indian spacecrafts. Rakesh Sharma went on a Soviet spacecraft. But now we are demonstrating, if it is successful, we will demonstrate indigenous capability to undertake human space flight missions to low Earth orbit. The spacecraft which is being developed by the Indian Space Research Organization consists of a service module and a crew module which will carry the crew, and collectively it is called as orbital module. This Gaganyaan mission is a joint initiative. ISRO, obviously it has to be there. Apart from ISRO, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL, and DRDO are also part of this mission. Now, once we develop this capability of going to the low Earth orbit, Prime Minister is thinking of one step ahead right now, and he has declared, not only now but earlier also, when the Chandrayaan mission was a success. At that time also he declared, and now also he has mentioned that India is going to have its own space station by 2035. Space station is an observatory in the space where astronauts live and do research with respect to space and with respect to Earth also. So, first of all, we should develop this capability of sending and bringing back astronauts. Then only that space mission, or that space station will be successful. The Indian space station. Now, let us see the significance of this. First is, if India successfully sends astronauts to space, India will be the fourth country to do so. The other countries before India who have this capabilities developed are USA, China and Russia. It will re-establish India's space research position amongst giants such as US, China and Russia. It will also give boost to India's ambition of setting up its own space station, which, the timeline as I mentioned has been set 2035 by the Prime Minister. The mission will provide unique opportunity to inspire and excite Indian youth and steer many students towards careers in science and technology. And a platform for space tourism will also be laid. This is going to be the significance of the Gaganyaan mission. We just hope and pray that this mission becomes successful. Next is science for sustainable development. As mentioned earlier, this is the theme for this year's National Science Day. National Science Day is celebrated every year. Today, that is February 28th. Now, what is the importance of science and technology probably? Actually, science has the answers to all the miseries. Science has the answers to poverty, hunger. But actually, have scientific developments led to eradication of these problems? Well, I'm afraid to say that in countries like India, it has not. And if I talk about the entire world, it has not. There are multiple reasons behind that. Some countries develop technology, or they have a new scientific finding, they refuse to share with others. They charge exorbitant fees and rent. They file for patents. And if that technology has the answers to many problems by which the world is suffering, the world keeps on suffering because, the greed dominates over there. Whoever can afford those solutions are able to do so. And majority of us are not in the world level, especially the developing and underdeveloped world. Scientific research and development also will enable us to become Atmanirbhar. We will always be dependent upon others for technology. Like, for example, I'll just quote an example of Kigali Agreement, just to make you understand the importance of research and development. Now, Kigali Agreement, as I mentioned, it is basically an agreement for tackling ozone layer depletion. Now, earlier there has been an agreement, that is, let's go to the blue board where we'll understand it better. In 1987, there was an agreement called as Montreal Protocol. Montreal Protocol was for tackling ozone depleting substances. ozone depleting substances like CFCs, because it was found that the ozone layer is getting depleted. There is an ozone hole which has been formed and which is allowing the ultraviolet radiations from the sun to enter the Earth's atmosphere, which are generally harmful for us. Life will not be able to survive if ultraviolet radiations from the sun are there in the Earth's atmosphere, reaching the Earth. And ozone is responsible for absorbing those ultraviolet radiations. Now, ozone absorbing the ultraviolet radiations was getting depleted due to human factors which were identified by the scientists, and humans were using components or chemicals like chlorofluorocarbons which were depleting the ozone layer. That is why they were called as ozone depleting substances. Now, in the Montreal Protocol, it was agreed to by all the countries that they will phase out the usage of ozone depleting substances. The developed countries were given less time to phase out, developing countries some more time, and underdeveloped countries more time to phase out ozone depleting substances, CFCs. Okay. By 2010, almost everyone, developing and underdeveloped, phased out the ozone depleting substances. They stopped using ozone depleting substances. That is why you go to buy refrigerators or ACs, you will see CFC free, because CFC was earlier being used as a refrigerant. There is no CFC now. CFC was replaced by HFC, that is hydrofluorocarbon. An agreement was signed in 2015, that was Kigali Agreement, where the parties are now saying that we have to phase out HFC also. And among these parties are developed countries who focus and invest a lot on research and development. Countries like India saying HFC is not an ozone depleting substance, then why should we phase out HFCs? Developed countries say agreed that HFC is not an ozone depleting substance, but HFC is a short-lived climate pollutant, SLCP, which is causing global warming. That is why it has to be phased out. India earlier did not agree, but last year India finally agreed that we are going to phase out HFCs also, and we have time till 2037-38 because we are a developing country. So developed countries have got time till 2028, 29 or 30. Developing countries have got time till 2037, and underdeveloped countries have got time till 2047. So by 2047, the HFCs also have to be phased out. Now, if we do not develop technology to replace HFC, we will have to depend on the technology developed by the developed countries. And they will sell us at exorbitant prices. We will have to take that because we cannot live without HFCs, like we cannot live without ACs, or we cannot live without refrigerators and all, where HFC is being used. So here comes the importance of research and development. We need to be focused on that. And if our focus goes in the right direction, our dependency on others will reduce. Now, India is committed to making and obviously this research and development will be a very important component in our development journey. If we want to become developed by 2047, we will have to focus on research and development. There are estimates which say that 3% of, expenditure of our, or 3% of our GDP should be spent on research and development. But unfortunately, we are not spending that much. Now, India is committed to making progress through sustainable means, as evidenced by commitments under Paris Agreement. We have to become developed by 2047, but it is not like we will be polluting the environment, we will not be developing in a sustainable way. That is why we have chosen the theme also, Science for Sustainable Development, this year. Sustainable development means that you are utilizing the resources in the present in such a way that the future generations don't compromise on the utilization of those resources. They are ample for them also. Sustainable development is definitely the need of the hour. But one question is adequate funding allocated for science so that we can focus or we can direct science towards sustainable development? That is the biggest question. But unfortunately, India's expenditure on research and development is lowest among the world's countries. How much India is investing or spending? It is around 0.64% of its GDP. Now, we have high science and technology ambitions. But, R&D expenditure 0.64% of GDP presently. It was 0.8% in 2008-9 and 0.7% in 2017-18. So as a proportion of GDP, it is reducing. But in absolute terms, it is increasing because in absolute terms, the GDP is rising very fast. But in proportion terms, the government has set a target for itself to make it around 2%. So this needs to be taken care of. How are other countries spending? If I talk about countries like USA, UK, they have been spending more than 2% of their GDP and their GDP is also very large. Most developed countries spend between 2 and 4%. Countries like Israel, they are spending around 5% if I talk about them. OECD countries, average spend is 2.7%. Israel spends more than 5%, the highest in terms of proportion. China spends 2.1% and we less than 1%. The global average, 1.8% is the global average. What should be the target for India? Now, many experts believe that by 1%, but ideally it should be 3%. Till 2047, we will have to invest if we want to become a developed country. The 2013 Science, Technology and Innovation Policy noted that increasing gross expenditure on R&D to 2% of the GDP has been a national goal for some time. 2017-18 Economic Survey also reiterated the same, that 2% of the GDP at least should be spent. And this is basically the target as of now. But we are not able to reach 1% also, it is 0.64%. Reasons for India not being able to spend, actually they are not clear as such. But it may be stemming from a lack of coordination between government agencies like various ministries and all, and a need for a stronger political will to prioritize R&D expenses. There is lack of these two things, which might lead to India spending less. Now, the big question is that how can India improve its R&D funding? And the answer here lies in increasing the private sector funding in R&D. Private sector funding in R&D is less. Now, through this pie chart we see private sector funding is 39.9% in R&D. Means private companies and all, they do R&D. They spend something on it. That will be also counted as expenditure in R&D, but that is 39.9%. 47.9%, the highest, comes from the Union Government of India. 7.3% comes from the state governments, and public sector industries 4.8%, like ONGC and all. These are public sector industries. Now, in this pie, this share has to increase, private sector. And for that purpose, the National Research Foundation Bill was also passed in 2023, but its implementation as of now is inadequate. So, this has created a problem. Now, how is the R&D budget utilized? Now, this is something which is disturbing. Department of Biotechnology used 72% of its estimated budget. Department of Science and Technology 61%. Department of Scientific and Industrial Research 69%. So first of all, the overall allocation is less for research and development, and from that too also 100% is not utilized. The utilized amount is even less. 72%, 61%, 69%. This is concern. Now, reasons for underutilization of funds. Why the funds are underutilized? Again, the reasons for underutilization as with underallocation are unclear but may indicate tedious bureaucratic processes for approving disbursements, lack of capacity to evaluate projects or clear utilization certificates, lack of prioritization for science funding by Ministry of Finance, inadequate planning or implementation strategy for requested funds by Ministry of Science and Technology, and last is the lack of capacity also reflects in delays in grants and salary disbursement to the researchers. So these are bureaucratic inefficiencies due to which underutilization of funds are happening. Now, steps that have to be taken towards sustainable funding. These are very simple: mitigating the underspending and underutilization. Obviously, the first step has to be this. These are the obvious first steps. Political prioritization of R&D means there has to be a political will, political focus has to be there on this research and development. Incentives for private investment. Private investment in R&D should be given in incentives because see, R&D is not lucrative. It will not give you instant results. You will have to wait. And you don't know how much you have to wait. So there should be adequate benefits of doing research and development. India also needs the bureaucratic capacity to evaluate science projects. The bureaucrats as of now are not adequate or they are not skilled enough to assess the scientific requirements of research and development. That is why also they are relaxed too much, which is not the need of the hour. So all these things are there which need to be done. And on this particular day, February 28, that is the National Science Day, this is an eye-opener which should open the eyes of the government and a very important topic for UPSC prelims as well as mains. Now with this, I end today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Not repeating it today. Namaste. Jai Hind.